Hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the S-79 Raider from Metal Earth, and telling you everything you need to know to get this kit built successfully. You know, there's a lot of modelers out there that say that the aviation builds are some of the hardest in the 3D metal model industry, and I would have to agree. All the wings and different fuselages tend to be pretty hard to do with just your tweezers. What things do we need to know to build the S-79 Raider? What tools are we going to need? And why does everyone keep complaining about the wheels on the side? These are all great questions, Groovers, and we're going to get the answers. Let's get down to the workbench and open up our package. And boom, there we have it. All 3 pages needed to build the S-97 Raider. This definitely looks a lot different than the last helicopter we built, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any easier. The first thing we're going to take a look at is building the propellers and tail. Next, we'll look at attaching the midsection and forming that cockpit. And finally, we'll talk about getting our wheel wells shaped correctly and getting everything attached together. There are some pretty interesting shapes here that we got to achieve. I wonder what tool we can use to get everything done. Let's ask our tool expert. Timothy?
Finally, a build worthy of one of my prototype benders! Ahem. With the S-97 Raider from Metal Earth being on the cutting edge of helicopters, it is no surprise that there are some tricky details. The tools you will need are nippers, tweezers, coning tools, fondant tools, and my bender. Let's see how well it works.
Thanks, Timothy. And that prototype bending tool looks very interesting for this kind of build. As always, Groovers, these are just our suggestions, and we don't need anything but nippers and tweezers to get the job done. But of course, having the right tools will make everything a lot easier for us. Alright, now we looked at our instructions and we have all of our tools. There's only one thing left for you to do, and that's to press that like and subscribe button. We're currently trying to get to 4,000 subscribers here and could really use your help. No pressure at all, though. Oh, hey, Matilda, you're doing a good job. Just keep printing away there, love. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We got all kinds of cool projects, and having you here is going to be so much better. All right, Groovers, let's get down to the workbench and build our helicopter. The S-97 Raider from Metal Earth is an experimental helicopter that will have you in wonder over its capabilities and marveling over its unique look. What at first might seem difficult, with a little bit of know-how, we'll have this little helicopter up and running in no time. Let's get started with our top rotors. We're going to use part 2 and 4 to help us shape our details. Part 1 is formed into an almost teardrop shape, while 3 is done in a circle. Personally, I like to use a forming tool to help me get the right kind of circle, starting with a bigger shape and then working my way down to the right size. See, this is looking pretty good. Now let's take part 5 and bend the edges down, making sure that we match the seams. This will create a half box that will insert into part 4. I recommend securing these tabs as we go, otherwise they're going to just keep popping out. Remember to bend these tabs nice and flat so they won't be in our way a little bit later. Now we need to do this exact same thing again for our second set. Once secured, we need to add the 2 together and place them onto part 11 with a good twist. Alright, not bad at all. But now we need to work on our wings and rear. If we look closely, the little wings here aren't bent flat, but instead have a bend on each side that when combined create a convex shape. To get the right shape, I like to use a small tool here to achieve this. Just a little roll will do. Once done, we can match it up to part 13 and 14 to see if we need to make any small adjustments. Part 14 has a lot of small pieces of metal that have to be bent. For this, we'll be using my prototype bender tool. Many of you have seen this lately on our channel in its full form, the Bender 1.0. It's now available on our website for purchase, just like this model. But getting back to our model, by going right up to the bending lines here, we can get these small bends that will eventually get the square shape that we're looking for. Remember not to close the bottom just yet, we have some details like our wings to add. Okay, this looks great! Now let's move on to our midsection and cockpit. After forming another wing, we come to part 19. Much like 14, we need to bend this part at the fold lines, doing our best to match part 14. We can match the two parts up a few times before attaching them together to ensure everything is in line. Yep, we're good to go. Let's keep in mind that we don't want to close the bottom up just yet. We need to add some more details on before that, and closing that up will just cause everything to be a lot harder, so keep it open, groovers. After securing that little landing gear, we need to work on the propeller on the rear. For the most part, this is pretty straightforward, but I know some of you might find it tricky. I have a tool here that will help me get this shaped, but if you don't have one, finding a broken pencil around the house will work just fine too. All we need to do is press our part into our tool, and then do a little bit of a roll. After getting it started, we can finish it up with our tweezers. We can now bend the tabs down 90 degrees and insert them through the propellers into our tail. With a quick twist, we're ready to add the rest of our body and our rotors. Twisty, 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 and there we go! Let's move on to this cockpit. Most of our detail in our cockpit requires us to match up the borders of our parts. Let's take a look at our chairs. With part 30, we have a piece that's made of basically 3 leaves. If we bend our left leaf 90 degrees, we can then bend the center using the side as our guide. This makes getting all of our details shaped properly way easier because we have a guide to follow. We can repeat this method for pretty much everything inside the cockpit. Once we have all of our details bent, we need to attach them onto part 29 with a secure flat bend. These tabs are going to be visible on the outside of our helicopter, so keep that in mind. Let's talk about the last piece of our cockpit, the actual shell. Unlike our last helicopter, this one doesn't have any broken pieces. However, getting the correct shape here can be tricky because of all the different bends and the little pieces of metal that we're dealing with. Like our other parts that were kind of similar to this, I went ahead and decided to use our prototype tool here, and it works fantastically. As you can see, I can accurately get all the bends that I need to get, even with the littlest pieces of metal. Now that I got a really good basic shape, we can touch it up a little bit, and there we go. Now we need to move on to our final part, the landing gear. The wheels themselves here aren't very hard to do. Just like before with our seats, we can bend one side of our wheels and then match the center, closing the wheel up when finished. Where this gets a little bit complicated is with part 42. To me, I found the instructions to be a little bit misleading here. What we need to do is bend the flaps towards the wheels for part 42 to be installed correctly. If you install our landing gear and they look a little bit wonky, well, you probably installed these incorrectly. By taking this apart very carefully, we can make some small adjustments to properly get these landing gear installed. Once apart, just reverse part 42, having the 2 leaves facing towards the wheel, and then reinstall them into the helicopter. Now when you lay the helicopter flat, everything should sit perfectly. The landing gear here is a tricky part of this build, so make sure you take your time. You don't want to accidentally scratch any of the finish, especially because this helicopter is finished in a nice matte black, and any silver will definitely show up. Okay, let's go ahead and finish this guy up. There we have it, the S-79 Raider from Metal Earth in all of its glory. This build was a lot of fun to put together, and to be totally honest, wasn't too complicated. Sure, the front bit here can be a little difficult, only because the instructions are a little unclear as to how that wheel detail is put together. I had to go back and fix mine afterwards, but overall, I think this build is great for beginners that have a few builds under the belt and want to look for something a little bit more challenging. Now, did this build come together so easily because we had a bending tool that allowed us to get those precise bends? Or is it because it was designed to have a little bit of tolerance? Well, these are all great questions. You see, Groovers, all of these are made in a 3D CAD program. And because of that, they're made by computers and everything is supposed to be precisely bent. In other models, if you're having a hard time getting your pieces together, I see people complaining that, oh, it just wasn't built this way. Well, no, actually, it was made to go together, but the problem is the part isn't bent precisely enough for it to go together. And that can be frustrating. I know I've had a couple of builds in the past that just didn't go together because one part of the metal was just a little bit too far away, and I had to go back and work the whole piece over just to get a little millimeter over. This is a pretty common problem when you don't have the precision tools to get the build done. And that little prototype bending tool is something that I really want to get out to the community to help you guys build these models even better than you're doing right now. But that will be another video, and this brings us to the end of this one. Groovers, I had a really good time building the S-79 Raider with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, as we got all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. Want to help the channel grow? Check out groovebuilders.ca. We have all kinds of really cool models on there at great prices with fast shipping to the United States and Canada. Until next time, Groovers, keep building. All right, GB1, make more room in the hangar. We got a stealth helicopter coming in.